Hey bro, let me tell you a story. I've already lost my focus 10 minutes after I started doing a chemistry practice paper. It was 2022 and I was staying back at school to do this chemistry paper. I had like 2 hours to finish it before I had to go home. But it was so ridiculously hot outside. It was like early afternoon. So I was constantly just wiping my sweat with tissues. And every few minutes, I literally had to go to the toilet to get more tissues. After a while, I looked at the time. It's been 30 minutes. So I have only 1.5 hours left. I decided, screw this. I'm going to this air-conditioned study room that's nearby. I entered the room and instantly my heart sank because there were already a dozen students in the area. Okay, fine, whatever. I find a place to sit down. I try to do my paper and I try to enter a flow state. But then one of the students starts talking. They weren't being noisy or anything, but it was enough to completely annihilate my focus. I didn't have the social confidence back then to tell them to just keep quiet. It was 2 years ago. So I was literally just coping with the noise, trying to focus, but always failing. So after wasting another 30 minutes, I decided, screw this again. I'm gonna go outside because it's not that hot now. And I go outside and there's a fucking soccer training session going on at the field. And the coach is just constantly freaking shouting, screaming at the players for whatever reason. And I was basically sat in front of the field. That was my study area. Okay, fine, whatever. I try to use my noise cancelling earphones, but it's like a shitty Chinese brand, so the noise cancellation keeps turning on and off by itself. It doesn't really work. And that by itself is constantly breaking my focus. I take it off, I try to deal with the noise. I actually get into somewhat of a flow state. I'm making decent progress in my paper because the coach decided to shut up. And then my friend freaking materializes out of nowhere and says hi to me. Focus ruined. But it's like, okay, fine. It's my friend and he was just saying hi, so I greet him back. He goes on his merry way and guess what? I check the time and it's been 2 hours. My time is up. I look at the chemistry practice paper and realize this was supposed to be a 1 hour 45-minute paper, but in 2 hours, I was only able to complete less than 3 questions, not even half of the paper, and so I felt fucking disappointed in myself. I got really pissed. As I left the school, in my mind, I cursed out all those students in the room, the soccer coach, and the hot weather, but not my friend. I love my friends. So basically, I did everything right. I was disciplined, I was motivated to do the hard work, staying back in school to do it, but I still had an unproductive day. And I go home feeling so freaking pissed off that day because I didn't get any fucking work done. I'm telling you this story because most students, and really people in general, don't understand the importance of having a flow state, of being in the zone when you do your work, of doing deep, focused work, which takes a lot of brain power instead of shallow, distracted work, which doesn't take a lot of brain power and it's actually kind of easy. Most people, they surround themselves with what I call flow breakers. They have flow breakers in their environment that they put themselves in. They have flow breakers on the devices that they work on. Many people have flow breakers in their own mind. On the other hand, the top performers, the straight A students, the millionaires, the athletes, their work time is sacred to them. They respect their work hours. They treat their workspace like a temple, literal temple. They are very strict with what they allow in their environment when they work, and they are ruthless in permanently removing any distractions that pop up when they work. And so the result is these people can have laser sharp focus during their work and they end up doing 2 times, 10 times, 100 times more work than the average person. And so of course they come out on top. They succeed. So if you also want to succeed, Keep watching. Part 1. The importance of flow state. Let me tell you something. The amount of work you do when you are distracted is negligible. Literally, almost zero compared to the work you do when you're in a flow state. 1 hour of deep focus work equals 100 hours of distracted work. That's right. In 1 hour of distracted work, you can't even finish the first question of the practice paper. But in 1 hour of deep work, you finish the entire paper with time to spare. And you want to hear something scary? It takes time to enter and to re-enter a flow state. It takes actually about 5 up to 20 minutes, according to my own experience. And the scientific research says it's even more, like 20 to 30 minutes. So that means in those 5 to 20 minutes, you're doing basically negligible amount of work compared to the next 5 to 20 minutes when you've entered a flow state. And that is assuming you have zero distractions in your environment and in your brain. Because if you do have distractions, when your flow state gets broken, you're gonna need another 5 to 20 minutes to refocus. So that's another 5 to 20 minutes wasted. Because, to repeat this for the third time, whenever you are not in a flow state, the amount of work you do is negligible, meaning it's basically nearly zero compared to the work you do when you are in a flow state. So you really need to start having this kind of mindset of wanting to preserve this precious thing that is your flow state, your focus, and not letting anything ruin it. So there are two types of flow breakers. Internal, which is basically you having short attention span and your own brain is distracting you, and external, which is basically distractions you have in your environment. If you want to know how to fix both of them, keep watching. Part 2. Overcome internal flow breakers. You know the beautiful thing about getting into a flow state, having a period of deep work, is that you actually feel happy, fulfilled, accomplished, and proud of yourself after being in a flow state for so long. You know when you finish an examination and you walk out of the exam venue with this feeling of high. Maybe it's ruined because you flunked the test, but you feel this elevated emotions, right? Yeah, that's because for most students, exam time is basically the only time they enter a flow state because they are forced to. And that's also the reason why you end up finishing papers within the time limit during the actual exam, but not when you're doing the practice papers by yourself, because you're in a flow state during the actual exam. Another thing about flow state is, when you enter a flow state, you basically have zero thoughts. You're kind of in this mode of doing whatever task you're working on. For example, when I'm recording or scripting videos or doing practice papers, I basically have no thoughts in my head. The words just naturally come to me. I don't have to stop and think about what to write or what to say unless I'm doing a practice paper and like there's a really difficult question. And I'm only aware that I've been in a flow state after the flow state has ended. That's how a flow state should look like and feel like. So when you're trying to get into a flow state, first you have 5 to 20 minutes of distracted work, of getting bored, and sometimes you're thinking of not even doing the work. It's painful and it's hard. You start having irrelevant thoughts. Those are your internal flow breakers. But then, after the 5 to 20 minutes, when you enter a flow state, all of these thoughts, they disappear. Your internal flow breakers are gone. You become unstoppable. Doing the work becomes effortless and easy unless something external distracts you. And then when you're done with the work, when your brain gets tired, and when you run out of your flow state after about 45 minutes to an hour, you will just feel so freaking accomplished and satisfied with yourself. So your actionable step is, when you're trying to do deep focus work and get into a flow state, in those first 5 to 20 minutes where your brain is generating irrelevant thoughts and you're having doubts, which is basically the internal flow breakers, or maybe you get distracted by the scenery outside your window or whatever, just refocus on the task at hand If you get distracted again, don't worry, refocus again. Push through this difficult, boring, and painful 5 to 20 minutes. Keep refocusing, and before you know it, you'll enter a flow state. And afterwards, you'll feel proud of yourself for doing it. And the best part is, the more often you get into a flow state, it becomes easier to get into a flow state again. Those 5 to 20 minutes become more like 2 to 10 minutes, which basically means your attention span increases and your internal flow breakers get reduced. Part 3. Cut out your external flow breakers. Stop doing dumb habits that are clearly ruining your flow state. I'm gonna go through a few common habits to absolutely avoid. Number 1. Multitasking and task switching. Because every time you switch from one task to another, you lose focus and you have to take 5 to 10 minutes to refocus. So every time you switch tasks, you lose 5 to 20 minutes of your time basically. So if you're switching tasks every 5 to 20 minutes, you basically get zero work done. Because remember, whenever you lose focus, the next 5 to 20 minutes of work will be negligible amounts of work. Habit number 2, and I can't believe people actually do this, having entertainment whilst working. Like looking at your phone while working, watching TV while working, listening to music while working. Because remember, every time you switch your focus away from your work to something else, you lose 5 to 20 minutes of your time. Okay, fine. There are some like, I don't know, lo-fi or binaural beats that can possibly improve your focus during work. Personally, it doesn't work for me. But if it actually does work for you and you're not bullshitting yourself, then fine, you can keep those things. Habit number 3, studying with friends. This absolutely ruins your flow state. You are literally surrounding yourself with a group of people that can just say a single word and take away 5 to 20 minutes of your time. I'm not even gonna use the phrase distract you anymore. I'm just gonna say take away 5 to 20 minutes of your time because that's what a distraction does. I've seen people in my school studying in groups and most of the time they're just fucking around, and even if you're not fucking around, you actually discipline yourselves to sit down, not talk to each other. I can say from personal experience, just having a human being there while you're doing work just adds like 50% more friction when you're trying to get into a flow state. So it's like, why would you even do that to yourself? But studying in groups does have a function, which is to clarify questions, ask your schoolmates about a certain concept or question that you are unsure of so they can help you with it, basically as a kind of consult. So I'm not saying to completely stop studying in groups. I'm just saying if you're gonna study in groups, your attitude towards group study should not be, I'm gonna go and get things done. Your attitude should be, I'm gonna ask my questions, clarify my doubts, and then get the hell out. Then I'm gonna go and get things done by myself. And I know you might be thinking right now, but studying in groups makes me motivated. I find it easier to start doing the work, and usually it's very difficult for me to do work at all by myself. Well, to that I say, if you make the work easier to start, you have to accept that the work becomes less effective. The work is only effective when it's hard and difficult and you have to use discipline and push through at first. So consider the amount of discipline that you have and make your own choice about what you want to do. Habit number 4, the Pomodoro technique. This godforsaken technique that I'm honestly just shocked at how much is being preached on the internet. Basically, the Pomodoro technique is when you work for 25 minutes and then rest for 5 minutes, repeat 3 times, then take a longer 30-minute break. I mean, if I explain flow state clearly enough and you understand it, then you yourself can clearly spot the problem here, right? If you use the Pomodoro technique, you purposefully break your flow state every 25 minutes. What the fuck, right? And once again, remember that you need anywhere between 5 to 20 minutes to get back into a flow state, and the work done during that period is basically zero. So basically, if you use the Pomodoro technique, only 20 to 80% of the period where you're working is where you're actually doing work. And I suspect you probably wouldn't even enter a flow state at all if you're the type of person to use the Pomodoro technique. Because if you do get into a flow state during the Pomodoro technique, you'll immediately realize how useless it is. So basically, most people who use this technique use it because they find it easier to start work when they have this 5-minute break dangling in front of them, which they're gonna probably use to scroll on social media or something. But like I said earlier, if you make the work easier to start, you're gonna have to accept that the work becomes less effective. The work is only effective when it's hard and difficult to start doing the work. So, the superior way of dividing your work and rest breaks is work until your flow state runs out, rest for 10 minutes, actual rest like taking a walk or lying in your bed, not scrolling on social media or playing video games, which actually drain your mental energy even further. Then get into a flow state again. When your flow state runs out, 10 minutes rest again, rinse and repeat. That's simple. Habit number 5, not having notifications off. I talked about this in my last video. Just turn off all your notifications, bro. They are a massive distraction. So, 2 actionable steps. Number 1, if you are doing any of the 5 habits I mentioned above, completely cut them out, except for the group study one, which you can just change your attitude towards group studying. And think of other habits that you are doing that I didn't mention above that is obviously screwing with your focus, and cut them out as well. Number 2, and this is very important, when you are doing the work itself and you get distracted by some external factor in your environment, be aware of that, and after the work block is over, for example, maybe you get distracted by your parents or your friends talking to you. So after you're done with your work, tell your parents or text your friends, okay, during this period of time, I'm trying to do focus work, so I would appreciate it if you could try not to disturb me at this time, okay? Or maybe you find yourself unconsciously going on to some app on your phone or some website on your laptop. Find a way to make those apps or websites less accessible, like install a website or app blocker or something. And there are like hundreds of different things that could be breaking people's focus, so I'm not sure which ones do you have. So just start being aware of your distractions and try your best to get rid of them. And if you did this for literally just 1 week, you would have basically gotten rid of 80-90% of your distractions, and your flow state would be significantly improved. I hope you found this video helpful. Please give me any criticism or feedback in the comments below, and I wish you a good day.